lawmakers who questioned Tony Hayward today. Iowa Democrat Bruce Braley is the vice chair of the subcommittee that held today's hearing, and he's here with me now as we continue our coverage on Capitol Hill. It was 6 hours plus today. Everyone did look exhausted when they walked out of there. Did you learn anything today?
Yes, Margaret, we learned a lot about BP's disconnect between their stated commitment to corporate safety and the reality. And I think the most damaging testimony that I was able to get from Mr. Hayward was he had made it clear he was hired to be CEO of BP because of past safety problems they had. He tried to say that they'd made huge improvements during the 3 years he'd been CEO, and there's a complete disconnect between that statement and OSHA's report that they had 97% of the egregious safety violations of all the refineries in the United States.
Now, Tony Hayward, he appeared voluntarily today, but, you know, the session sort of opened and ended on the same note, which was, you're not giving us the answers that we want. You don't have answers as to why and how this happened here today. I mean, did you truly expect to get that level of detail ahead of the investigation being concluded? Well,
we did, because the committee has a long history of sending out important witnesses, an outline of the subjects we're going to cover during the hearing, so that they can't come in and say, well, I didn't know this was going to come up. I think that's why Chairman Waxman and Chairman Stupak expressed frustration throughout the hearing. We sent very detailed requests for information. Most of that was completely ignored by Mr. Hayward.
Now, I understand your concern, but I've got to ask, because I've talked to other CEOs who said, you know, as in the oil industry, we have an idea of the risk involved with projects, but we don't necessarily know the ins and outs of the engineering on each and every project out there. Is that what you're asking of Tony Hayward?
No, but I think that ignores the reality of deep water drilling, Margaret, which it's an ultra-hazardous activity. You've got to know the ins and outs because of the enormous consequences if things go bad. And I think one of the things that was so unbelievable is that BP submitted documents as part of their permitting process indicating there was a 99% likelihood of a blowout during the 40-year term of this lease. And yet, despite that, expected this to go forward without any real severe consequences.
Well, they were also allowed to go
Absolutely,
forward
by the Minerals Management Services, who gave them a waiver to do an extensive environmental impact statement.
Now, there was a tremendous amount of focus on the blowout preventer.
Right.
And, you know, Tony Hayward very much stuck to his speaking points on this, but he was drilled pretty hard about, you know, is this truly a fail-safe mechanism? Why did you rely on that? What should we do as an industry now? When you look towards the horizon here and the regulation, legislation that is inevitably going to come out of this, is that level of focus on the actual mechanisms used for safety going to be something that you're calling for specificity on?
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean, one of the things that we know
Why the hyper-focus today?
Well, because when we got our first joint briefing on this disaster from Admiral Thad Allen, he said that this was more like the Apollo 13 than the Exxon Valdez. That shows you the lack of knowledge of deep water drilling and the repercussions. So that's why, as a necessity, we have to get involved in the detail.
Congressman, thank you for making time for us today.